competency provides leaders with the skills and tools to advocate for quality inside our professions and promote our union's role in advancing education transformation and student learning. The prominent themes of this competency include building capacity for continual improvement and learning, showing leadership and understanding the union's role in student learning and leading our professions, advocating for policies and strategies that positively impact our professions and student learning, analyzing and applying research, policies, and trends to determine potential impact. As with all the competencies, we've identified behaviors that correspond to some of the themes. The skills and behaviors addressed in this module are primarily seen at the agenda-driving level of leadership. Chris Lloyd is the Vice President of the Montgomery County Education Association in Montgomery County, Maryland. Chris is very passionate about teachers and education support professionals owning the responsibility for their professional growth and practice. Chris is also nationally board certified, and even though he's a full-time release local president, he has chosen to stay in the classroom in order to stay grounded and never lose his practitioner's point of view as a leader.
Folks external to education start to dictate policy and practice, and they start to dictate regulations and laws. And what's important is that in order to lead our profession, you have to assume responsibility for it. You have to belong there. You have to own it. So in Montgomery County, our association, we truly believe that teaching and learning is something we own. We own that. Classroom teachers own that, nobody else. And if you believe that classroom teachers own it, then you have to take responsibility for that. You have to ask yourself some hard questions. And as a leader, when you lead the profession, you have to protect the profession. That's really hard because sometimes in old unionism, in industrial unionism, it is about protecting anything that breathes. I'm not about protecting anything that breathes. I'm about protecting our profession and the education profession. In doing that, we will protect people. We will do right by everyone who serves us. But we also have to make sure that when people need growth, we're going to get them that growth. We're going to get them that help. And when people are in trouble, we're going to get them the help that they need at that point. I think those are really important pieces when you talk about leading a profession, but we have to own that. And for the longest time, I think educators sometimes have a victim mentality. Oh, woe is me, things happen to me. And once you have that victim mentality, then you get what's coming to you. I own this. We own this. Teachers own this. We don't have to ask for a seat at the table. We're at the table.
He tells us a story about the association having made a bold move and taking the lead through the establishment of a professional growth and review system in Montgomery County.
So when you talk about leading the profession, for example, is approximately 13 years ago, we approached the superintendent as an association. And we said, you know what? The current teacher evaluation system that we have is a check mark. It's actually 14 check marks that provide very little feedback to teachers, very little meaningful feedback, and very little growth opportunity for teachers. We would like to engage with you in developing a full-fledged professional growth system with staff development teachers at every building, with an evaluation system that is qualitative rather than quantitative. We would like to do that with you because we believe that teachers can own the evaluation and growth of the profession. The superintendent at the time that we had kind of kicked us out of the office. Said, thank you very much, but no, that's an administrative function, not yours. But because you're teachers and you're persistent, you wait for the new superintendent a year later, and the new superintendent came in, had the same conversation. And the new superintendent said, absolutely, that is something that we should be engaged in. And so we developed a peer assistance and review program in Montgomery County that has been in existence now for 12 years. It served over 6,000 teachers. And we believe that that's part of leading the profession, that we own that consulting teachers are a part of developing teachers, and that when people need help, we are part of that solution in getting them some help. And that's a way that you lead the profession. We're in partnership with the system. In the Peer Assistance and Review panel, there are 8 teachers and 8 principals. I'm one of the co-chairs. The vice president of the Principals Association is the other co-chair. It's funny because sometimes people ask us, well, who are the system people on there, like, how's MCPS represented? It's a kind of an odd question to me, because I say, well, we're MCPS. All of us, all 16 of us. You don't need someone from central office to be MCPS. All of us are MCPS.
Listen to Chris as he talks about what it means to have students at the center of our association work.
Most public education models operate on a triangle. Okay? So the superintendent's at the top of the triangle with the Board of Ed. Then you have your associate superintendents or deputy superintendents underneath him or her. And you got your mid-level central office people there, and then you got your field directors down here, and you got your principals here, and then teachers are here, and kids are at the very bottom of that triangle. And kids know they're at the bottom of the triangle. So one of the lessons that I guess I learned and continue to get reinforced on is you have to kind of invert that triangle. If you invert the triangle and kids are at the top, then those who serve children are right underneath of them at the top. So that would include our teachers, our support professionals, our para-educators, and principals then support teachers, and then folks support principals. And it actually places the superintendent at the bottom of the triangle. I think that's hard sometimes for some superintendents because we're so used to power being this hierarchical flow down. But actually, if you think about it, the superintendent becomes the most important person to uphold the triangle. It's a huge triangle. It's on its point. And the point rests on that one person, the superintendent, to make sure that all the systems are there to support it, because otherwise the triangle will fall over. So if you view it that way, the superintendent actually becomes a huge necessity to being able to do the work of the system. But it's a different mindset, it's a different mentality, it's a different paradigm.
Students are very much at the center of our next leader's work. Debby Chandler is a high school parent community specialist and vice president of the Spokane Education Association. Debby leads our professions by being a strong advocate for the students and their families, and working collaboratively with colleagues, parents, and the community to identify strategies, policies, and funding sources that have turned around graduation rates at Rogers High School in Spokane, Washington.
I was asked as the ESP member in our building to be part of that, to write that grant and make sure that it was an all-inclusive grant, that everything that we did made sure that everybody in our building, ESP and certified, were included in every part of that grant. We reached out to our parents, to our community members, to our staff, and said, what is the number one things that you want to see with this money done to with the school to help you be successful? So for our teachers, what is it that you need that would help you be successful in teaching kids every day? And everything that came out of those questions and those meetings were wraparound services. We needed a nurse. We needed a parent, somebody to talk to parents. We needed somebody to go out and talk to our community. When I heard those wraparound services, I was so excited because that's what I do as a job in the student office, is I know that those needs are there because I talk to parents every day. I talk to hundreds of parents every day that call and tell me that they need specific things for their kids and that their kids aren't coming to school because they can't go to the doctor. Their kids aren't coming to school because they're staying home being daycare for their single mom that's working 4 jobs to try to make ends meet. The grant has had a huge impact not only on our school personally, but on our whole entire school district. Because when we wrote that grant being very bold. We decided to do things that Spokane's never seen before. We closed our 9th and 10th grade lunches. We closed campuses because we were having a lot of our kids leave campus and getting into trouble because 9th and 10th graders, that's what they do when they're 13 and 14 years old and don't know better. So we closed 9th and 10th grade campuses for our kids. We got a little bit of pushback from the community, but not too much, because what they realized was we had raised the expectations of our students through that grant process. And so we closed the campus for school, and lo and behold, our attendance rates went up. That year, our graduation rates went up. Our upperclassmen were expected to be upperclassmen. They were expected to be the leaders for our 9th and 10th graders. So we implemented a whole bunch of different programs for our upperclassmen to be leadership kids, so our 9th and 10th grade kids could have somebody to look up to as far as a leader in our school. Took a little bit of flack from our school district, but now we're in our 3rd year of our grant, our 3rd and final year of our grant, and actually our school district is now looking at everything that we've done in our grant and implementing that throughout our school district.
As you see, Debby's commitment to her profession is about advocating for her students as well as for policies, strategies, and the association. This next example from Debby shows what empowered educator leadership looks like. Here, Debby makes a bold move to step up to take the lead in a new role that didn't exist before.
I took over the school community partnership job in October, and I went to one of my first meetings as the school community partnership. Nobody in our district has ever had my job before. So I went to a school community partnership meeting, and I was the only educator in that whole entire room. So they were talking about schools and community, but the educator was missing. And I sat there and thought, well, that's kind of strange that there's not an educator on this whole entire board. And it was everybody that does things for kids in our community, the YMCA, the YWCA, the Boys and Girls Club, Youth for Christ, all of our faith-based organizations. But there wasn't there wasn't even an educator on that board at all. So I became the educator voice on that board, which was pretty powerful and pretty cool. I started speaking up and letting them know what's happening at our school. I'm so proud of our kids. Our kids come from extreme poverty, so they come from a whole range of different avenues. So for me to be able to speak up about our kids and the great things that we're doing at our school is really easy for me to do. But I'm not afraid to take that risk that when somebody says to me, well, schools are failing. Your school's a failing school, so what makes you any different? Or you're just a secretary, what makes you the expert in that? And I just turn around and put it back on them and say, you know what? I invite you to come to my school. I invite you to walk a day in my shoes and see the difference that we make in the lives of kids.
From Debby, we heard story after story about the students and families she works with. Some were heartbreaking, and some were stories of hope and high school graduation. Debby's ability to articulate the needs of students in poverty, combined with her authentic and caring educator voice, has helped lead to several community partnerships that have benefited her students, providing much-needed supplies and wraparound services. As you can see, the videos reflect a variety of themes and associated behaviors at different levels. You also saw other competency domains at play within this segment, like communication and advocacy. Now that you've learned more about the Leading Our Profession's competency, its meaning, and some of the behaviors associated with it, what role do you play in building a culture of professionalism, either as an individual member or as an organizational leader? In your community or state, what alliances or agreements positively impact our professions and student learning? How would you begin to go about forging those agreements? If NEA were to interview you, what example would you give?